Okay, picture this. You're stuck in that soul-crushing traffic jam again, or maybe staring at that overflowing work inbox, feeling that distinctly modern anxiety that if you're not productive every single second, you're falling behind. Sound familiar?
Oh, absolutely. A daily reality for so many.
Yeah, it really is. And then you flick on a nature documentary, and there's a zebra just peacefully grazing, no deadlines, no demanding boss, nothing. It makes you wonder, why the huge difference?
Right. Why do we end up feeling completely frazzled stomach in knots while the zebra seems, well, fine?
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty much the central question we're digging into today, and a fantastic guide for this is the book Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert M. Sapolsky.
Ah, Sapolsky, he's the real deal,
Yeah.
right? Not just some pop psychologist.
Definitely not. He's a neuroscientist, a biologist, professor at Stanford, a heavyweight. But the magic of the book is how he blends that hardcore science with, real readability, humor, great anecdotes. It just pulls you in.
So if you're listening and you've ever wondered why stress ties you up in knots, this is for you.
Precisely. We're diving deep into Sapolsky's insights.
Okay, so the core idea, the absolute baseline, is this difference between acute and chronic stress.
That's it. Zebras face acute stress. They see a lion, a real, immediate physical threat. Their body goes into overdrive, they run like mad, and if they escape.
If they escape.
Right, crucial if. But if they do, the stress response shuts off. They go back to grazing, crisis over.
Whereas we humans,
excel at manufacturing stress. We worry about hypothetical future problems. We endlessly replay that argument from last Tuesday. We fret about things completely outside our control.
and our bodies react as if there's a lion right there.
Exactly the same physiological response. But our lions, the deadlines, the financial worries, the social pressures, they don't just disappear after a chase.
They stick around in our heads.
Generating that chronic stress that just grinds us down, often without us even fully realizing the toll it's taking.
So today we're going to unpack the biology behind that stress response.
See how it affects our bodies and minds.
Why we seem particularly prone to this long-term stress.
And importantly, pull out some practical lessons. What can we actually learn from Sapolsky's work, maybe even from the zebras themselves, to manage it better?
Sounds good. Expect plenty of science, but told in a way that hopefully makes sense and is actually useful.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's break it down. The biology first. What exactly happens inside us when that stress alarm goes off? Think about that zebra again, spotting the lion.
Right. Alarm bells. Within seconds, the body shifts into survival mode. It's an incredibly fast and complex process.
Driven by hormones.
Correct. The main player is something called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, HPA axis for short. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue.
HPA axis, got it.
So this HPA axis triggers a cascade, releasing key stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline. Think of them as the body's emergency response team.
What do they actually do?
They do a lot very quickly. They jack up your heart rate, pump blood to your muscles, tense those muscles for action.
Ready to run or fight.
Precisely. And crucially, they also slam the brakes on functions considered non-essential in that moment of immediate danger. Things like digestion, growth, even parts of the immune response.
Makes sense for the zebra. All energy needs to go into escaping that lion.
Perfect evolutionary design for that kind of acute threat. Escape now, digest later.
But,
Yeah.
and here's the kicker for us. Our modern lives keep that system switched on.
That's the problem. We might not have actual lions chasing us down the street.
Usually not.
Usually. But our constant worries, anxieties, the relentless pace, it keeps that HPA axis humming along, keeps those stress hormones circulating almost constantly. It's like the emergency alarm is stuck in the on position.
But Sapolsky explains how damaging that is long term.
He does brilliantly. This state of chronic stress, with cortisol and adrenaline constantly bathing our tissues, has serious negative consequences. He introduces this really useful concept, allostasis.
Allostasis, different from homeostasis.
Yeah. Slightly different. Homeostasis is about maintaining a stable internal equilibrium, like a thermostat keeping a room at a set temperature. Allostasis is more about achieving stability through change. It's the body constantly adapting and adjusting to meet perceived demands.
Adapting to stress.
Exactly. It's dynamic. But this constant adaptation comes at a cost. Sapolsky calls this cost the allostatic load.
The wear and tear from being constantly stressed.
Pretty much. If the stress is relentless, the allostatic load builds up, and eventually the systems start to break down. It takes a toll. Think of it like constantly revving your car engine eventually. It causes damage.
And that damage shows up in some pretty scary ways. The book goes through system by system, doesn't it? Starting with the heart.
Yes, the cardiovascular system takes a big hit. That elevated heart rate and blood pressure useful for the zebra sprint becomes chronic in us.
Leading to?
Well, it can damage artery walls, make them less flexible, increase inflammation. Basically, it significantly bumps up the risk for heart attacks and strokes. It's sustained pressure the system wasn't designed for.
Yikes. And then there's the digestive system. The title itself mentions ulcers.
Right. Why zebras don't get ulcers. It's not just a catchy title. When the body's in fight or flight mode, digestion is put on the back burner.
Because you don't need to digest lunch when you're running for your life.
Exactly. Blood flow is diverted away from the gut. Acid production changes. The gut lining can become more vulnerable. It creates conditions ripe for ulcers or worsens things like irritable bowel syndrome. It's a matter of biological priorities.
And what about our immune system? I think everyone's experienced getting sick right after a super stressful period.
Oh, classic example. Cortisol, while essential in short bursts, becomes a potent immune suppressor when it's chronically elevated.
Suppressor. So it weakens our defenses.
It does. It dials down the immune response, making us more susceptible to infections, colds, flu, you name it. It's like stress opens the gates and lets the invaders in more easily. That post-exam cold isn't a coincidence.
Okay, this is all physical, but the brain. Stress messes with our heads too, right?
Yeah.
Memory, specifically.
Hugely. And it's fascinatingly complex. Acute stress, that zebra-seeing lion moment, can actually enhance short-term memory formation. Useful for remembering where the danger was.
Okay, a temporary boost.
But chronic stress, that's a different story. It's particularly damaging to the hippocampus,
The memory center.
a key region for learning and forming long-term memories. Chronic stress, especially high cortisol levels, can actually shrink the hippocampus and impair its function. It literally makes it harder to learn and remember things clearly.
Wow. So it directly impacts our cognitive ability.
Absolutely. And that leads directly into mental health impacts too, doesn't it?
The link between chronic stress and things like anxiety and depression seems undeniable these days.
It's very clear physiologically. A constantly activated stress system throws brain chemistry out of whack. It disrupts the balance of neurotransmitters.
Like serotonin.
Exactly, like serotonin and dopamine. This can pave the way for, or certainly worsen, conditions like depression and anxiety disorders. It's like your brain's alarm system is just constantly blaring, leading to mental exhaustion and distress.
Sapolsky also talks about those baboon studies in Kenya, right? Showing social stress having physical effects.
Yes, those studies are incredibly illuminating. They showed that baboons rank in the social hierarchy and the chronic social stress that came with lower status.
Like being constantly picked on or threatened by dominant males.
Precisely that kind of psychological stress. It correlated directly with higher baseline cortisol levels, worse cardiovascular health, and other physiological markers of chronic stress, very similar to what we see in humans under pressure.
So it's not just about physical threats. Social and psychological stress hits us just as hard, physiologically.
Absolutely. It powerfully demonstrates that our bodies react just as strongly to social or psychological threats as they do to, well, a lion.
Which brings us back to the core question. If this stress response is natural, why are we seemingly so bad at managing it compared to zebras? Why do we get the ulcers?
The human predicament. It really comes down to our brains. Our amazing, complex, sometimes torturous brains.
Our ability to think.
Our ability to think abstractly, to anticipate the future, and perhaps most importantly, to ruminate on the past. Zebras react to the here and now. The lion is either there or it isn't.
But we can worry about a presentation next month or stew over something someone said last year.
Exactly. We don't need a physical predator in front of us. We can conjure up stressors purely in our minds, imagining a potential job loss, replaying an argument, worrying about what-ifs. Our bodies fire up that same HPA axis response.
Sapolsky calls this psychological stress, right?
Yes. It's stress generated internally by our thoughts, anxieties, and anticipations detached from any immediate physical danger. And our modern world is practically engineered to trigger it constantly.
You mean deadlines, bills, social media?
All of it. Financial pressures, work demands, the 24/7 news cycle, comparing ourselves on social media, societal expectations. These are chronic stressors that simply didn't exist in the environments where our stress response evolved.
There's that great Sapolsky quote, something about being smart enough to invent these problems.
And stupid enough to let them dominate our lives. It's harsh, but it captures that paradox perfectly. Our sophisticated cognition is both a blessing and, when it comes to chronic stress, a curse.
Okay, so it sounds a bit bleak. Are we just doomed by our big brains? Or does Sapolsky offer some hope, some ways to be a bit more zebra-like?
Well, we can't exactly switch off our prefrontal cortex, but yes, the book definitely points towards strategies for better management grounded in the science. It's not a self-help manual per se, but the implications are clear.
Like changing our perspective.
That's a big one. How we interpret a situation hugely influences our stress response. Seeing a stressful event as a challenge we can tackle rather than an overwhelming threat can significantly dampen the physiological reaction. It's about appraisal.
Mind over matter to some extent?
To a significant extent, yes. Another huge factor he emphasizes is social support.
Having people around you, friends, family.
Absolutely. Strong, positive social connections are a powerful buffer against stress. Remember those baboons? The ones with stronger social bonds generally had lower stress hormone levels, even within the same hierarchy. Feeling connected, supported, it matters biologically.
Okay, so community is protective.
Yeah.
What else? Exercise.
Definitely. Regular physical activity is one of the best ways to metabolize those excess stress hormones and help restore physiological balance. It's like it gives the fight-or-flight system a proper outlet, burning off that nervous energy. Plus, all the other mood benefits.
Makes sense. Move the body to calm the mind.
And along similar lines, rest and relaxation are critical.
Chilling out. Sleep.
Yes, sufficient sleep is vital. And practices like meditation, mindfulness, deep breathing, things that actively calm the nervous system can help counteract that chronic HPA axis activation, giving the system a chance to stand down.
And I remember the book talking about the importance of having a sense of control.
That's another key element. Feeling like you have some agency, some predictability or control over aspects of your life, even small ones, reduces the feeling of helplessness that often fuels stress. The zebra has zero control over the lion.
But we can often make choices, take actions, influence our circumstances.
Exactly. Even perceiving that we have some control can make a big difference to our stress levels. It counters that feeling of being overwhelmed and powerless.
And thinking about all this now, here in, 2025? It feels more relevant than ever, doesn't it?
Oh, incredibly so. The world seems to be throwing more stressors at us than ever before. Constant notifications, the pressure cooker of productivity culture.
Social media comparisons.
Add in the background hum of larger anxieties, economic uncertainty, climate change, global instability. Sapolsky's insights aren't just interesting science. They feel like essential knowledge for navigating modern life.
So understanding and managing stress isn't just nice to have. It's becoming a necessity for well-being.
I genuinely think so. It's fundamental for maintaining both physical and mental health in the face of, well, everything.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. We've dived deep into why zebras don't get ulcers, exploring that crucial difference between the acute, life-saving stress of the zebra and the chronic, grinding stress so many humans experience.
We've seen the physiological toll it takes on our hearts, digestion, immune systems, even our brains and mental health.
And we've touched on why our brilliant minds make us so susceptible, turning worries and anxieties into real physiological responses.
But the key takeaway, I think, is empowerment. Understanding the science behind stress gives us clues, actual strategies for how to manage it better. It puts us more in the driver's seat.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
In this case, quite literally power over our own physiology, to some degree.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners to mull over. How can we consciously, intentionally find more ways to switch off that stress response in our daily lives?
Yeah, how can we cultivate a bit more of that zebra resilience? Maybe applying some of Sapolsky's lessons, perspective, connection, movement, rest, control can help us find more moments of peace, more time just calmly grazing, metaphorically speaking.
It's definitely worth thinking about. And if this discussion sparked your interest, we absolutely recommend picking up Sapolsky's book. It's a fascinating, important read.
Couldn't agree more. Your body and mind will thank you.